Apartheid is doomed.
Global Vision presents the television news magazine of Southern Africa.
It doesn't exist on television, and it doesn't exist.
I would actually appeal to the world that information is there and can be found.
Because it is important that people know what is happening.
This week, a South Africa Now special. Nelson Mandela in America. Day one. Our crews and reporters hit the streets to tell you what happened and what the networks won't be reporting. Hosting this South Africa Now special report, correspondent Fana Kekana.
Realoja. He is here. South African leader Nelson Mandela arrived in America June 20th, a Wednesday, the day our weekly program usually airs first. So we decided to devote this week's report to a full account of the first day of Mandela's historic trip to the United States, what he did and what it means. Our team coverage begins at Kennedy Airport, where the Mandela Party arrived.
I'm Carolyn Craven at Kennedy Airport, where Nelson and Winnie Mandela are getting off the plane to begin their first stop on their historic American tour. They're being greeted here at the airport by a host of dignitaries, including Governor Mario Cuomo of New York, Mayor David Dinkins, and representatives of the ANC and the Mandela Welcoming Committee.
We are honored by your presence. We are inspired by your lives. We are humbled by your sacrifices and your strength, and we are encouraged by your triumphs. We pledge to support your cause with the work of our own hands until finally the day comes when all your people and all of our people enjoy the full freedom and opportunity that is the birthright of all of God's children.
For decades, we waited for this day. We never doubted it would come. Your leadership transcended the walls and the separation of Robben Island. No prison could keep you. You freed us to do what had to be done to assist you and the African National Congress in keeping the pressure on. And we will.
Our simple message in all these countries is that sanctions should be maintained. We are saying so because sanctions were introduced for the purpose of dismantling apartheid and of making sure that every South African, black and white, is able to determine his own future.
In his airport speech, Mandela thanked the American people for their support. He goes on to a ticker tape parade and his nationwide tour, which includes a stop at the White House, where Mandela will continue his call to maintain economic sanctions and to keep the pressure on Pretoria until apartheid is a thing of the past. At Kennedy Airport, I'm Carolyn Craven for South Africa Now.
We'll go back into the streets of New York for more coverage in a minute. But first, a background report on where Mandela has been before touching down in the USA. In just the last week, he has had a whirlwind tour of Europe, including a meeting with the Pope and a massive welcome in the Netherlands. And he was in Canada before arriving in New York. Nadja Smith reports.
When Nelson Mandela's Walk to Freedom took him through the prison gates last February, he couldn't have realized that it would continue to over 20 countries, beginning with a thunderous welcome in his own beloved land, where he reaffirmed his commitment to a non-racial, democratic South Africa.
I stand here before you not as a prophet, but as a humble servant of you, the people.
In South Africa, stadiums overflowed to welcome him home. It was emotional, and at the same time, it was clear that his release and the unbanning of the ANC meant that South Africa would never be the same. Mandela was immediately swept up in the struggle, visiting war-torn Natal province, where he accused police of encouraging political violence and called for unity.
We are fighting against apartheid and against the policy of racial repression. We are freedom fighters, and our concern is the unity of our people.
But he had another agenda: to report to his organization headquarters in Lusaka and be told what role he would play. In Zambia, he was heralded as a champion for all Africa. The most emotional moments came when he greeted his comrades of the ANC. Albie Sachs, who lost an arm to a South African bomb attack, was one of them.
I thought he was the Pope, just for one moment in that hot sun with the crowd around me, and I wanted him to heal my arm. Yet I felt that wonderful, warm, loving embrace from him.
At ANC meetings, Mandela was honored with a new position of leadership, deputy president, with the top post still officially held by his former law partner, Oliver Tambo. In Lusaka, Mandela also spoke to a delegation of visiting congressmen who invited him to address the United States Congress, a speech scheduled for June 26th. From Africa, the next stop was Sweden, a country that has long supported the ANC. Mandela's main mission was to reconnect with his oldest friend, Oliver Tambo, who was recovering from a stroke. Tambo's son, Dali, was there.
It wasn't perhaps the tearful burst of emotion that some people might have expected, but it was a kind of deeper joy, and to see them together was perhaps more joyful for the people around them.
Mandela also visited Namibia to join the celebration of that country's long struggle for independence. From there, he returned to South Africa, where he was to lead an ANC negotiating delegation.
I think everybody understood that, in fact, this discussion ought to have taken place many years ago.
Pretoria responded with its own international strategy. President de Klerk visited Europe with hopes of getting the governments there to ease sanctions. Many indicated that they would consider doing so, despite the thousands who crammed into events like a rock concert in London to honor Mandela and pledge support to the ANC.
Together, we must pledge to continue our united efforts for the abolition of the apartheid system.
It is in the United States where Mandela now must be his most persuasive, rallying the faithful on the one hand and convincing Congress that it is too soon to lift sanctions. This is Nadja Smith for South Africa Now.
After leaving the airport in New York, Mandela joined a motorcade which traveled through Brooklyn into Lower Manhattan. Our cameras were there.
I'm Joseph Diescho at the Boys and Girls High School in Brooklyn, New York. One of the first things Mandela did when he got out of jail was to urge the young people of South Africa to go back to school and learn. It is fitting that the first stop he makes here in New York is here at this school in Brooklyn.
For your cause, to enjoy the support of the youth, the future leaders of this country and the world, cuts down my age almost by 25 years.
What does Mandela's visit here mean to you?
Mandela's visit here to us means that we have to keep up the pressure, because only international pressure will finally give the youth in South Africa and everybody in South Africa freedom to vote, to mean something in their lives.
Organizing a visit of this magnitude has involved months of planning by official agencies led by an ad hoc citizens group chosen by the African National Congress. The fact that Nelson Mandela has been officially invited to the United States by President Bush and that New York City's Mayor David Dinkins has been a long-time supporter assured a level of federal and local government help. South Africa Now has been following this behind-the-scenes organizing effort. Mweli Mzizi reports.
The first national organizing meeting for the Mandela visit occurred here at the headquarters of the State, County and Municipal Employees Union. The plan was to set up local organizing groups in all the cities Mandela was to visit in his 10-day whirlwind trip. It took a week or two, but soon organizations were in place to supplement the African National Congress, which was under siege.
I don't know if we are managing, but the only appeal that we are making to people is that, sure, Nelson Mandela represents
universally cherished ideals, and therefore it is understandable that everybody would want to interact with him. But it's absolutely impossible.
Planning for this visit goes back to last February, within hours of Nelson Mandela's release.
The purpose of today's press event, is to celebrate the long-awaited release of Nelson Mandela, to herald it as a victory for the anti-apartheid movement and a strategy of economic sanctions against South Africa.
Meetings to coordinate grassroots organizing have been underway for weeks.
It is going to be one of the most joyous welcomes that anyone has ever had coming to New York City.
To date, the organizing effort has been wide. The turnout will show if it has been deep as well. This is Mweli Mzizi reporting for South Africa Now.
Nelson Mandela's visit here has clear political objectives, including winning support for the African National Congress, an organization that was for years treated as terrorists in South Africa and given minimal attention in our own media. Randall Robinson of Trans-Africa has been a principal organizer of the Mandela visit and offers his view of the ANC's importance.
The ANC says Nelson Mandela is coming to America to thank the American people for their support in the fight against apartheid. He credits American activism for playing a significant role in creating the conditions that led to his release and the unbanning of the ANC. But Mandela is also here on some very serious and difficult business, raising the funds to make real democracy work in South Africa. Banned for 30 years, the African National Congress is faced with an awesome task as it works towards dismantling apartheid. It must have the tools with which to organize. The ANC must open and equip offices as well as staff them. It must also acquire the tools of communication. Freedom of the press, the saying goes, belongs to the people who can own one. Another daunting task. 15,000 ANC members still in exile will be returning home, most in need of housing and employment. Nelson Mandela has said it will cost many millions to build the kind of political organization that can lead South Africa into an era of non-racial democracy. And he's counting on his many friends in America to recognize these needs, hoping they will be as generous now that he is out of jail as they were when he was incarcerated. Mandela may be free, but running a freedom movement isn't. That's my view. I'd like to know yours. I'm Randall Robinson of Trans-Africa for South Africa Now.
You are watching South Africa Now and our special coverage of Nelson Mandela's visit to America.
The Mandela visit has touched off domestic political controversies. One involved supporters of Israel troubled by the ANC leaders' support for Palestinian rights. As we've reported, Mandela has persuaded some key Jewish community leaders that he also backs Israel's right to exist. Others involve Puerto Rican nationalists who want to meet Mandela because they were considered political prisoners and want his support to free others. There are concerns that his visit could affect the status of pending civil rights legislation. Another controversy which already caused some embarrassment at the White House press conference is the disclosure that it was the United States and its CIA that may have been responsible for Mandela's capture in 1962. Our investigative reporter, Eric Nadler, has more on this story.
The Atlanta Journal and Constitution played the story on page 1. The CIA set up Nelson Mandela. Other media picked up the story, and the White House press corps confronted President Bush in the Rose Garden about the disclosure. Would the president apologize to Mandela?
I don't know what I'll do about that, but I'm very pleased that he's coming here. I'm very pleased that he is free, and I saw a story about that, but I cannot attest to it. I haven't looked into it yet.
But the sensational news story is not really new. A South African newspaper broke it in 1986, and CBS News amplified the story that same year. Independent producer John Kelly, an expert on the CIA, worked the story for CBS.
I initially obtained a 1962 secret CIA report about their penetration and surveillance of the ANC. And this led me to begin an investigation. And right at that time, CBS News contacted me because a story had broken in the Johannesburg Star about the general incident, about the original arrest of Mandela.
The explosive story died. None of the major media picked it up. The New York Times, the official paper of record, didn't print it. Neither did the Washington Post. It wasn't until Nelson Mandela's release that the story was set free. Just why the story vanished is a story in itself. Even CBS apparently forgot about it, failing to mention it during its long hours of Mandela release coverage. Perhaps that's why the network refused to provide South Africa Now with a copy of the broadcast. Media critic Jeff Cohn.
It's very disturbing because this story was out in 1986 in the South African press. And during that period of Mandela's freedom, when he was getting out, we gave this story to the TV networks and other major media. And they poured a lot of coverage on the Mandela release. And the theme of the coverage, what can the U.S. do to help Mandela? Well, our question is, why wasn't the question asked, what did the U.S. do to help Mandela get behind bars? And there's a certain historical amnesia in the media.
Mandela diplomatically says, let bygones be bygones. The man accused of turning him in says, no comment. When contacted at his Colorado home by South Africa Now, Donald Rickard refused to confirm or deny his role in the affair. The CIA also issued no comment.
The CIA has been in bed with the South African regime for decades. John Stockwell, the former CIA case officer who ran the Angola operation, he says that it's well documented that the CIA has been on the side of apartheid. So if you begin to ask this question, well, gee, how could the CIA have helped the South African police put Mandela behind bars? It would open up the larger question, how long has the CIA been on the side of South Africa?
For South Africa Now, this is Eric Nadler.
The critics didn't dampen the enthusiasm of the folks lining the streets of Lower Manhattan for the ticker-tape parade.
This is Phillip Tomlinson. I'm here at New York's financial district, a center of economic power and a place where this city traditionally welcomes heroes with ticker-tape parades. However, this one's different. It's the first time a black leader has ever received this type of reception. The crowds gathered here early this morning for the parade coming up from Battery Park. Police barricades could not keep them from getting a closer glimpse of Mandela and his wife Winnie, waving from a glass bubble on top of the Mandela Mobile, a bulletproof vehicle weighing several tons. Fana Kekana was also on hand for this exciting event.
Many South Africans in exile will get a chance to meet with Mr. Mandela tonight, myself included. I'd be very pleased to see the man that I've heard so much about, a man that I last heard of in the dusty streets of Alexander.
Here with me today are three of the thousands who turned out here today to welcome Nelson Mandela. Why are you here today?
This is an historic occasion for the world, and I'm here to witness that occasion and to see this great man. Specifically for the United States, I think it's a chance for us to instill a heightened awareness in the racial problems that we have had over the years and have let fall by the wayside since the Civil Rights Movement.
And why are you here today?
Today, so my son can witness the history that is taking place here in New York City. Nelson Mandela spent many years in prison for his beliefs. Also, I believe that America should keep up the sanction against South Africa. So my son must witness this historical period.
What do you know about Nelson Mandela?
Nelson Mandela stayed in jail for his beliefs, his struggle, and his choices.
Mandela's three-day schedule in New York is packed. For a while, it seemed as if one of the big events, a rally at Yankee Stadium, would not happen. But now it's on, thanks to the support of the music industry. Among the performers will be Johnny Clegg and Savuka, Tracy Chapman, and jazz musician Roy Ayers. From Lower Manhattan, this is Phillip Tomlinson for South Africa Now.
South Africa Now's new hotline number is your chance to be heard. Call 1-900-535-NEWS. The cost of the 1-minute call is $4. $3 goes for the transcript of the program and $1 for administrative costs.
New York City is not just staging spectacles. Its mayor is throwing his prestige behind efforts to tighten local sanctions laws. In a minute, we'll take you to New York's City Hall for the next official part of the welcoming ceremonies. But first, a report on local sanctions from Phillip Tomlinson.
Keeping sanctions in place is at the center of Nelson Mandela's worldwide tour. In Washington, at the national level, the administration may be interested in loosening restrictions on trade with South Africa. But at the local level, in New York, Mayor David Dinkins is pushing a tough new sanctions law.
If you do business with South Africa, you have no business with the city of New York.
But even as the city announced plans to step up pressure on South Africa, there is concern over its decision to award a multi-million-dollar contract to First Boston, a bank at the center of a controversy involving a number of investment firms doing business in South Africa. First Boston is one of 5 major firms chosen to underwrite $20 billion in municipal bonds over the next 4 years. Although the firm claims it operates autonomously, it is linked to Credit Suisse, one of the world's 3 major traders of South African gold bullion.
Credit Suisse has a representative office in South Africa. They have about 170 million in outstanding loans, and they are all involved in the gold bullion trade.
The banks involved stand to make $180 million in fees. All refused comment. But contradictions aside, the Dinkins administration is moving ahead with local legislation that it says is a model for the rest of the country.
This is Carolyn Craven at City Hall, where huge and enthusiastic crowds turned out to watch Mayor David Dinkins present the keys to the city to this citizen of the world.
Mayor Dinkins, ladies and gentlemen, many observers are fond of comparing Johannesburg with New York. For our people, New York has a special meaning and even fascination. I am therefore very pleased to receive the key to the city of New York. It is, I believe, in recognition of the heroism and courage of the oppressed people of South Africa.
The citizens of New York felt Mandela brought their city together.
It was the single most memorable thing I've ever witnessed, and I will be eternally grateful to Nelson Mandela and Winnie Mandela for coming to us and for sharing their magnificence with us.
And the beautiful thing about it is he was able to bring everybody together, a closeness to everybody. And I'm not just talking about black people, I'm talking about whites, blacks, Chinese, Puerto Ricans, the whole bunch of us.
All people.
And all people. Everybody. And I think this is what everybody, this is the whole idea of this whole thing. And this is what the whole thing he was fighting for. So this is what I like about the whole idea of Nelson Mandela being here in New York. And when I stress that he brings us all together, here's a guy standing behind me on my back, and I don't even know him.
By the time many of our viewers nationwide see this program, Nelson Mandela may have visited your town. South Africa Now will be covering the full trip, coast to coast. Here are the highlights, city by city. Saturday, June 23rd, Boston, where he'll go to the Kennedy Library and attend a public rally in his honor. Then it's on to Washington, D.C., to meet with President Bush and address a joint meeting of Congress. In Atlanta, he'll visit the gravesite of Dr. Martin Luther King and be presented with an honorary degree from Morehouse College. Then Mandela heads even further south to Miami, where he'll address the union workers of AFSCME, the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees. Detroit is the next stop, where he'll meet with auto workers and address a rally. On June 29th, he heads to the West Coast to Los Angeles and a concert and rally at the Hollywood Coliseum. Finally, Oakland is the last stop, where he'll speak at a live concert. That's our program for this week. If you're interested in any of the issues we cover, send a self-addressed stamped envelope to South Africa Now, P.O. Box 1907, Canal Street Station, New York, New York 10013. South Africa Now is produced by Global Vision on a non-profit basis in association with the Africa Fund, a tax-exempt organization providing assistance and relief to victims of apartheid. We leave you now with more memorable moments of Nelson Mandela's first day in America. On behalf of everyone on South Africa Now, I'm Fana Kekana. See you next week.
Nelson Mandela, Free at Last, a South Africa Now PBS special, is available on home video for $14.95. Please send check or money order to Post Office Box 1907, Canal Street Station, New York, New York, 10013. For a transcript of this program, send $3 to South Africa Now Transcripts, care of Journal Graphics Incorporated, 267 Broadway, New York, New York, 10007. To order